Hi, I'm Kai, and welcome to modding. In general, I've been getting a lot of requests to make some kind of a beginner's modding guide, and so here we are. That's what this is. I will be using Jurassic World Evolution 2 for this because that's what most of you play, but this works exactly the same for Planet Zoo and Jurassic World Evolution 1. It's just a general frontier modding guide. The only things that change are which Nexus page you go to and which game you click on in your library. Now, I'm pretty sure Planet Zoo and Jurassic World Evolution 1 can only be bought on Steam, but Jurassic World Evolution 2 can also be bought on the Epic Store and the Windows Store. The Steam and Epic Store versions are pretty much the same, but the Windows Store one is a little bit different, so I'll show you both Steam and Windows Store. And yes, I bought Game Pass just to make this guide. And of course, you can only get mods on PC, not on consoles. There's a few things we need to cover. There's where to find mods, what to do before you download a mod, how to install a mod, what to do after you install a mod, how to uninstall mods, and then some general community rules and what to do when the game updates, but those kind of tie together. There's 3 different types of mods, those being new file mods, replacement file mods, and save games, so I'll show you how to install them all from start to finish. But there is one thing you'll need before we start. You see, most mods are packaged as zip files, which means you can just double click on them in Windows with nothing extra installed and they'll open like this. But some mod authors seem to be determined to make life difficult and package things as a RAR or a 7-zip file. And for those you'll need a second app to open them. Now you can use something like WinRAR, but that's ancient and not very good, so I'd recommend 7-zip. It's still ancient, but not quite as ancient, and it is significantly better. I'll link it down below. Just go here and click on whichever link is relevant to you. For most of you, I imagine that'll be the top one here. And with that installed, you can just double click any RAR file or 7-zip or any other package format and open it as if it was a zip file, but inside 7-zip. You can also drag and drop as normal. Arguably the best place to find mods is where you download them, on Nexus Mods. Here you can change this search bar setting to Games and then look for Planet Zoo, or Jurassic World Evolution, or Jurassic World Evolution 2, which is what I'm using for the guide, so that's what I'll be looking for. And here you can start sorting. You can look for new mods today, new mods this week, latest and updated, which is a very important tab to keep track of. This is where bug fixes and new features come in quite often. You can look at trending mods, all-time popular mods, most recently popular mods, that sort of stuff. If you see a mod you like, you can just click on it, and that'll take you to the mods page. You can also click on the author's name if you really like their content, and then user files. You can sort by game and see all the stuff they've made for that game. And of course, I will leave a link to the Nexus pages of Jurassic World Evolution, Jurassic World Evolution 2, and Planet Zoo down below. Then, of course, you have YouTube. Best in Slot covers a lot of new mods whenever they come out. He's got a weekly or bi-weekly mod showcase series. Then there's their Dandy Man, who speaks a language I do not understand, but there are captions, and he covers both new mods and mod updates, which can be extremely helpful in this sort of constantly updating climate. Then you have Wonder GTA Gaming, who used to cover mods more than he does now, but he still does sometimes, so this is a good channel to keep an eye on as well. And then of course, my channel. I both cover the mods and then do in-depth showcases and guides on all the features, and I cover all the updates, but I only cover my own mods so far. I have been thinking about diving into covering other people's mods as well, but I don't want it to get too confusing to people who are used to this just being my stuff. So, we'll see. And I have individual playlists for Jurassic World Evolution 2, Planet Zoo, and Jurassic World Evolution 1 mods that I've made. Another good place to look is the Jurassic World Evolution subreddit, where people sometimes post about new mods, and if you join the Discord, you can have a look at the modded content chat. And of course, following your favorite modders on social media, that being Twitter, YouTube, anything like that, will probably keep you up to date with their content. Hint hint, nudge nudge. I almost forgot to mention this, but Planet Zoo side, you also have Leaf, who's a very prolific mod maker himself and covers mods whenever they come out. Lion Rider, same thing, prolific mod maker, also sometimes covers mods. And Rudy, who covers mods less, but still does sometimes. Alright, well let's say you found a mod you liked. You watched a video, saw a post, and clicked the link, or just found it on Nexus. What do you do now? Well, there's a few things you need to do before you download the mod, and this is the most important step that a lot of people miss. First of all, check if the mod is up to date. All of my mods have the version number that they're compatible with in the title. So if you open up the game, you'll see 1.7.11, and then if we go back to the mod, 1.7.11, so it should be stable for this version of the game. But also worth noting, just because the version doesn't match, doesn't mean that the mod 100% will not work. Basically, this version number is the latest version of the game that the mod was fully tested on and confirmed to be completely stable, or at least as stable as the last release version of the mod. So a newer version might just mean it's not been tested yet, or it might mean there's a minor issue that needs to be solved, but the mod could still work. For example, here's another one of my mods. This version is a bit outdated. Now, everything the mod adds still works, but it does replace 2 of the paths added in the most recent update. So until that's fixed, I won't be updating this because it doesn't 100% work. So what I'm saying is, if this is outdated, you can still download the mod, but don't expect it to necessarily work. You can test it, if it works, it's fine, if it doesn't, don't use it yet. You can also have a look at the posts to see if someone's saying anything about what's going on with the mod or what the outdated feature is, or if it's completely broken, if you want to do that. But of course, the more outdated a mod is, the more likely it is that it just will not work at all. For example, here is J-Tunnels. That was made for version 1.3.3. That is an ancient version of the game, and this mod will not work at all right now until I've managed to update it. And lastly, if the title says discontinued, the mod will not be updated anymore. Don't ask about it. This is usually just because the mod is now part of a bigger mod. For example, Invisible Feeders is now part of Expanded Feeders. Next, have a look at the mod description. All of this stuff is here for a very good reason, and that is, a lot of this is not obvious. You will not know how to use it unless you read it. I also very strongly advise you to watch any video guides the mod comes with, because again, that will explain the more advanced features of the mod that you will just not figure out on your own. And the last thing to check before you download it is the requirements. This is crucial. The mod will not work without these, and will probably just crash your game. As you can see, this mod requires ACSC and Kaicore General, so let's open those up as well. And just like last time, check for the game version, which this one lists down here. Have a look through the description, and check the requirements. That all looks fine. The mod has no dependencies, so let's just go into Files and click Manual Download. And then Slow Download. And there it is. And let's have a look at the other mod. Also, check the version number. That looks fine. Check the mod page. I've already watched these because I made them. Check requirements. Only requires ACSC, which we now have. And of course, make sure to check the required version as well, which is fine because we downloaded version 0.647, which is more recent than this one. And that also looks fine, so let's get it. Manual download. Yep, we got that one. And slow download. And now that we have both of the requirements of free build, we can download that mod as well. One thing I forgot to mention here, always read the download link description. This can have some really important things in it, like issues or if it doesn't work for one version of the game but works for another. So always make sure you've read everything this has to say before you download the mod. One more thing to check, modders that use Kaicore General will also write the version of the mod in this format where you have game version 1.7.11 - mod version 1.4. But that's not the most recent stable version of the mod, that's just the version it was released for. It's just a good thing to check for. For example, Kaicore General, it works for 1.7.11, but the last version was specifically released for 1.6.4. But that all looks good, so let's download it. Manual download, download, and slow download. You can use Vortex Mod Manager for this, but that will become a little bit more complicated in a future step, so I don't recommend it right now. Alright, with all of those downloaded, let's open up the files we got. That's ACC, that's Kaicore General, and that's free build. Now the next step that's very important, read the README file. or at least have a scan through it. This will tell you how to install the mod, where to install it, or if there's any major issues that you should be aware of. Now with my mods, I put all of this information in the showcase and guide, minus the installation instructions, but not all modders do guides, so make sure to read this file if they include it. Now here's a very important step. Do not, under any circumstances, right-click and extract all, or extract in any other way, because that will give you a folder like this. This is not a mod. This is a folder with a mod in it. If you put this in your game, it will not work. Which is why a lot of the install instructions I have say drag and drop or copy and paste, specifically. Instead, you'll want to either double-click the mod folder or right-click and open a new window. I'll do that because I have 3 of them. If we open up this one, you'll see the install instructions say drag and drop or copy-paste the entire Kai free build folder into your game directory. Not just the folder's contents, so not this, and the zipped folder, not the zip file. So this folder, not the zip file. And this is generally how you'll install all new file mods. So let me show you how to do that. On Steam, you'll want to right-click the game and go into Manage and Browse Local Files. Then go into Win64 and OVL Data. This is the mod folder. If you have the Windows Store version of the game installed, go to the drive that you install your games to, go into Xbox Games, Jurassic World Evolution 2, and then Content, then Win64, then OVL Data. But one last thing before we actually install the mods. You'll remember that free build required both KaiCore General and ACSE, while KaiCore General required just ACSE. Well, the game has this really annoying issue with caching. That is, if it loads them in wrong order once, it'll just do that continuously. And then your mods and your game won't work. Until you delete the mods, that is. So to make sure everything works fine, I would recommend installing mods in dependence order and then launching the game before you get to the next dependence order, just to make sure everything's cached before you install mods that depend on the mods you just installed. And all that means is just never installing a mod at the same time as a mod that it depends on. So for example, KaiCore General depends on ACSE, so you install them separately. Free build depends on KaiCore General and ACSE, so you install first this, then free build. Expanded Decorations requires only ACSE, so you can install it at the same time as KaiCore General or at the same time as free build. It doesn't really matter. You can group it into either one of those two. So basically, we're going to install mods in groups of dependents and then launch the game to teach the game that it can load those mods first. And then we're going to install mods that depend on those mods and then launch the game again to teach it that it can load those mods afterwards, and so on and so forth until everything is installed. And as the instructions said, the general rule for installing new file mods is just to drag and drop them into your OVL data folder. So let's do that. First of all, the only mod that doesn't require anything else is ACSE, so we install that on its own. And then we're going to launch the game. And here we see that ACSE has been installed correctly because we can see its version listed at the bottom of the front page. And now ACSE is cached, so we can close the game. Now we can install all the mods that require only ACSE, which in this case is KaiCore General, so let's install that. And now we're out of mods to install, so let's launch it again. And now we can see that KaiCore General has been installed correctly, because if we go into settings, you can see that the modding menu it adds is right here. So we can close the game again. And now we can install all the mods that require only ACSE and KaiCore General, which in this case is free build. So drag and drop it in. And that's that installed. If we now launch the game again, and because we have KaiCore General installed, we can go into settings, modding, and see that free build has been installed. It's got all the info, everything is up here. With most of my mods, if you install them incorrectly, they just either won't appear here, or they'll appear with the auto tag because the game cannot read the manifest file that came with the mod. But not all mods come with KaiCore General support, so let mod authors know to do that if they don't work. It'll save us a lot of testing time. And if we now start a sandbox map, we'll see that buildings can be placed over each other, like so. Paths have all the new stuff. Fences have the new stuff. And if we go into the modding menu again, down here, you can see free build is installed. But not all mods look the exact same. For example, I include the mod folder directly within a zip file. Some other mods have an OVL data folder or some other kind of folder before you get to the mod folder. So how do you know if you have the right mod folder? Well, if you click inside a mod folder, you'll find a main.ovl file, or an init file, or manifest, or any of these files here. If you have these files, that means you're within the mod folder. You click one out, and then drag and drop that in. And of course, a readme file always helps explain which folder is the mod folder. So it's always good to check. But 9 times out of 10, the file directly within the zip file will be the mod folder you're looking for. And this works for all new file mods. So this is my sort of gameplay mods, this is new dinosaur mods, new decoration, foliage mods, all of those should work the exact same way. So, now that we've confirmed the mods have worked, the next thing to do is to go into settings and just see what the settings menu has to offer. There's an info panel which will add some information. Some mods have really important information over here, so just make sure to check that out. And in this case, we can also customize the mod. And because free build on its own is a pretty bad example of this, I've also installed expanded feeders where you can see that the usage of the mod and all the commands are listed here, so that's very important to check. And the same is true for Kai's Wii Toolbox, where everything is listed here, all the shortcuts that you wouldn't normally find. One more very important thing to check is to go into the mod folder and see if it has a config file. You can just open that by double clicking on it, and you can change a lot of stuff that the mod does. This is especially true for something like expanded terrain tools, where a lot of the mod is the config file. You can change sort of the whole point of the mod here. And even more so in something like free build for Planet Zoo, where the config file is absolutely massive and really lets you customize the experience. So with that covered, how do we now remove a new file mod? Well, thankfully that's quite simple. We just find the mod folder and delete it. And that's it, it's gone. Just make sure that when you do this, you don't delete dependencies. So for example, don't delete Kaiko General or ACC before you delete free build. And one very important point for testing mods, if you delete a dependency, the mod that depends on it will not load. So if you're trying to find out which mod is crashing your game and you delete ACC, and suddenly things stop crashing, you did not find the mod that crashed the game because no mods are loading anymore. So the mod that was crashing isn't loading. So when testing, always delete the most dependent files first. There are some exceptions. For example, if the icon format changes, this file would still crash the game even without ACC installed. But that's a rarer exception. Next, I'll show you how to install a replacement mod. Unfortunately, replacement mod authors are usually not very clear about their mods being replacements. Now you can figure it out from context, but it doesn't say this is a replacement mod. But generally, if it's a remodel, or if you download the mod file, and it comes with a folder that you already have in OVL data, like this one, then it's a replacement mod. But installation is the same, just drag and drop it in, and then just say, yes, replace all files, and that will replace the files it needs to. And as you saw in the background there, I found another replacement mod. This one's a little bit more complicated, but if it's more complicated, it usually comes with instructions. So let's download it. And you'll see that it's just a bunch of loose files without any readme or anything like that, and no folder path to install it under either. So how do you figure out where to install it? Well, if you go into the description, it'll tell you. It says, simply extract and place the files in content 0. Let's start doing that. In content 0, dinosaurs, land, Giganotosaurus. So we grab all of these and drag and drop them in. But again, make sure to read the description and check for any version number. This mod has no version number. Well, it has a mod version, but not a game version. It says Feathered Species DLC. That's a little bit vague if you don't remember your DLC numbers. So in cases like this, you'll just have to go off the date and just test it. If it works, then it works. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But both of those mods replaced existing files, so how do we undo that? How do we uninstall them? Well, on Steam, you can right-click the game, go into Properties, Installed Files, and then Verify Integrity of Game Files, and this will uninstall any replaced files. It will not uninstall new files, but it will uninstall replaced files. Uninstalling replaced files on the Microsoft Store is a little bit more complicated, but it can still be done. You just go into Start, type Add or Remove Programs, open that up, look for Jurassic World Evolution 2, specifically the one you got from Microsoft Store, which should be the one with the sort of company name and size right there. And then you click on it, Advanced Options, and either Repair or Reset, and that will also uninstall replaced files. And with that, we finally come to save game mods. So I'll use this one because it's the most popular one, I'm pretty sure. But in general, most save files call themselves map mods. If you see the word map in the title or park or anything like that, unless it's expanded parks, it is just a save file. Once again, read the description, check requirements just in case. Sometimes save file mods require mods that are sort of used in a save file. Next, look for the version name. There is no version in the title. It has been updated quite recently, and if you go into Files, there is a version number there, and that's pretty recent, so it should be fine. Manual download, slow download. Open it up, and it has a README, so read the README. There is an install guide, so absolutely watch that if you're installing it, but I'm going to show you how to do that here. So this mod has two parts. It has the sandbox save as well as the career save. The career save is saved inside the player file. And you can find your Steam and Epic save games by going to your OS drive, down to users, your account, over to saved games, Frontier Developments, and then Jurassic World Evolution 2, or Planet Zoo, or Jurassic World Evolution 1. But we're going to go into this one here, and then your player ID, saves, and you can drag and drop this file in here. And then you can also drag and drop the career file, but I don't want to progress the career, so I won't do that. But of course, if you want to drag the career file in, I would strongly recommend you copy your old file, just in case you want to undo that change at some point. And that's that. That's installed now. If you open up the game again, and go into Load Game, you'll see that new file is now in our sandbox settings, because it was a sandbox game. So it says .sandbox. And if you want to delete the save file mod, just click on it and delete it. And to undo the career changes, just delete the career file you copied from the mod, and then rename the one you copied earlier as a backup to player. And how do you install save games on the Windows Store version of the game? Well, you don't. I'll show you where to find them, and that'll probably explain why. Go into %app data %, just because it's a bit quicker. Back out into app data, local, packages, and Frontier Developments. Then here into System App Data, this folder here, and then your ID. And that is the save files. Yep, they're sort of compressed. There's some sort of processing going on here. You can probably install them and share them, but this is going to be a real pain. So people don't really do it. And next, some general modding community rules. And the only real one is, don't harass or spam modders. Keep in mind that if you want to ask a modder to update their mod, you're probably not the first person asking for that, you're probably the 30th or 40th person, and the best way to make sure a mod does not get updated is to make the modder hate hearing about it. Most modders have other commitments or jobs, so this isn't a full-time thing they're working on. And my mods in particular are very experimental in nature, so I typically don't know what the fix is until I found it, and then it's done. So in general, asking for the release date of a mod is a little bit pointless, because if it's done, it's being released. If it's not released, that means it's not done yet. And when is it getting done? Well, it's not a corporate thing, there isn't like a deadline you have to work to and release whatever you have finished by the time you get to that deadline. It's finished when it's finished. If you want deadlines, that means mods either have to be delayed to match the deadline, or released unfinished to match the deadline. So, as a blanket statement for all of my mods, if it doesn't say it's discontinued in the title, it is not discontinued. I did come up with the whole tagging standard for a reason. So, if it's not discontinued, it's somewhere in the queue to be updated, after all the more major stuff has been updated, including stuff I haven't released yet that still needs work. But if a mod has not been updated in a while and it doesn't say it's discontinued, make sure to check out the post section on the mod page, because, more likely than not, the mod author has said why that is there, and you don't need to ask them again personally. And by far the most important part of this is not to spam the author outside of Nexus. I won't get too much into this, but every game update I do get absolutely flooded with messages not only on Nexus, but also on Discord, Twitter, and YouTube. And, as some of you know, I have discontinued a mod in the past that I was going to update because the spam got so insufferable. Basically, a game update broke the tools, and the tools could not update the mod at all. I made a post about that, I was very clear that the mod could not be updated, but people kept tagging me and messaging me on Discord about it almost every day for the 3 or 4 months that it could not be updated. So in the end, I said I would not update it even if the tools got fixed because I just didn't like hearing or thinking about that mod anymore. So if you want to message or tag an author about something, just keep in mind that if there's a high chance that the author has heard about that many times before, then the only thing you're doing is increasing your chances that you will not get an update to that mod. But obviously bug reports are not only fine, they're encouraged, so long as they're not getting spammy and there's not like 10 people reporting the exact same thing. And if you have any questions about when the mod is getting updated, or if it's getting updated, well, I've just answered that here for you. Next, the very important question of what do you do when the game updates? Well, the correct answer is to say uninstall all your mods, but I don't really personally do that. I keep them installed, and then, if something stops working, then I uninstall them. Again, keep in mind that if a few days have passed, the mod author has almost certainly heard of the issue, but of course, check the bugs, check posts, if no one's mentioned it, absolutely mention it, we need to know. But if there's other posts saying the exact same thing, don't turn it into spam. So how do you find out which mod is broken when a game updates? Well, that's not super simple. A lot of people assume it's the mod that seems to be affected. For example, if placement is damaged, people seem to think it's free build. It's usually not. What you need to do is uninstall all of your mods, so drag and drop these somewhere outside of the Jurassic World Evolution 2 repository. If you put them in here or here, they will still be red, so put them in common or something. There we go, I made a new folder in Steam Apps Common. I'm going to drag and drop these in. And then again, reinstall in groups of dependents. So first, ACSC, launch the game, see if it still works. Then, Kaiko General, launch the game, see if it still works. If you have more than 5 mods in a group, I would install 5 at a time, something like that, test them. If something's broken there, uninstall all 5 and then reinstall them one by one until you find the mod that is broken. But one little tool to help you is Kaiko General. This mod scans a Nexus for mod updates, so if I launch the game with an outdated mod, it'll tell me. Also, make sure to periodically visit the modding menu, because you'll get warnings about mods that are not stable, or mods that are broken in some way. Or, of course, mod updates. So which mod would I personally recommend? Well, that's a kind of tricky question. I'm very much a gameplay-focused player, and I am one of the very few gameplay modders, so the only mods I can really recommend are my own, and obviously I'm very biased on that. But I made a little list just to cover the very basics. And by basics, I mean either things you need for other mods, or mods that don't completely change the gameplay and add new gameplay elements, but do enhance the existing stuff a little bit. First of all, ACSC, that's not one of my mods, but it is required for almost every mod out there, so absolutely grab this one to begin with. Next, Kaicore General is required by a lot of mods, including all of my mods. And it adds a modding menu and an ability to auto-track mod updates, which is super useful. Next, Kaicore Menu. It's a bit more niche, but it adds some hooks into the base game API to let us add new menus into the game, so some of my mods also use this. Beyond that, just to begin with, I'd only really recommend things that just enhance the very base experience and don't add too much to it. So, free build? Well, it adds a fair bit, but it's all just enhancing base stuff, so you can build things over other items, you can toggle snapping, toggle aligning to networks being paths and fences and that sort of stuff. And now you can also change the path widths and maximum lengths, as well as the maximum lengths of fences with this, so it's quite useful to have just in the background. Next is expanded terrain tools, which just increases the functionality of terrain tools, so it adds a new intensity slider that lets you set the intensity of all the tools that you're using. It adds a new roughen tool and lets you remove foliage with any brush, so you don't have to keep jumping back to the remove foliage brush. Holding shift with it lets you instantly place all foliage. Holding X lets you ignore vehicles when placing stuff. And then it also just adds more degrees of customization, so you get a lot more subdivisions of radius intensity, and it's all editable from a config file. Next is expanded speed controls, which is a very nice base to have. It just lets you go faster and slower in the game. So slower just looks kind of cool, faster lets you just skip through some boring bits. And that's sort of it for the base. I guess one or two more mods I'd recommend. My Wii Toolbox mod, which adds a lot of tools to the game. I can't really cover it here. There's a 3D movement tool, a damage tool, which Frontier has since ripped off. There's an environment tool to change weather and time of day, a dinosaur spawn tool to skip the hatchery, a dinosaur control tool which lets you set sort of stats, set commands for dinosaurs to execute, all that sort of stuff. Really recommend you watch this to get an idea of it. But again, this took me 31 minutes to cover everything, so I'm not going to cover that here. Beyond that, maybe expanded feeders. This is more advanced though, I'd say this is something you have to be really looking for. It adds invisible feeders and then also programmable feeders, so you can release dinosaurs into your park at set intervals, or if they follow certain rules. For example, you can release dinosaurs if their population drops below a certain amount. Next, I think expanded behavior is a good one to have, but it's not been updated yet. I'm still working on this one. It basically massively expands the behavior trees of dinosaurs, makes them a lot more realistic, a lot more interesting, and even though Frontier has implemented similar features to some of these and outright copied others, they didn't do a very good job of it, so I still need to update this stuff anyway. And then you get stuff like expanded paths, pylons, and fences, which is cool, and it's, I think, one of my popular mods, but it adds a lot. It adds a lot of decorations, a lot of fences. I don't think this is a good mod just to get your feet wet. I'd say don't get this one to begin with. Get this one if it's updated, maybe. This one if you're confident in it. This one is a good one to have, but again, if you're confident in it, these are the ones you should probably start off with. And with that, I think we are finally done. Thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. If I missed anything, please do let me know. And I'll see you around.